Welcome back to Only Talk Sports. We talk sports every single day, or at least we try to. I'm Ernst Jeffrey. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our video. It always delivers. It's that time this Saturday with a triple header of top 10 matchups on ESPN. We've got the greatest rivalry in college basketball by far, having another rendition of the rivalry with the Duke Blue Devils traveling on that short journey on Tobacco Road to the North Carolina Tar Heels. This matchup is more highly anticipated than either of the matchups that were last season. I know that this game always does deliver, as the moniker says, as Dick Vitale always exclaims before talking about this game. But as you look at last year, the North Carolina Tar Heels, they got swept by the Duke Blue Devils, and they were not ranked. And the Duke Blue Devils, they were struggling in their own right, even though they did have a better season than the Carolina Tar Heels. But still, both of these teams are now ranked in the top 10. And when you go and look back at this rivalry, it flips back and forth. It's always a 50-50 rivalry. At one point, the series was literally 50-50 for like several games in a row, where both teams had won 50 out of the last 100 games, and they both had scored around the same amount of points. It's unbelievable how competitive that this rivalry is. North Carolina does lead the series 143-117, but in the last 30 to 40 years, the rivalry has been much more competitive and has earned its spot currently as the best rivalry in college basketball for sure. There's other great ones, but this game is always highly anticipated, and especially this year. Duke with a 7-2 record in the ACC, with the North Carolina Tar Heels posting a 9-1 record in the ACC. So Carolina has the best record in the ACC right now, and if the Duke Blue Devils are not able to knock off North Carolina in this game, it's going to be tough for them to win the ACC. They'll still be in contention, but Carolina will have the advantage in the conference by 2 games, and it will be tough to knock them off that spot. But I'm going to predict who I believe is going to win the 261st rendition of this rivalry game between Duke and North Carolina. So let's get into it. Now, you look at the Duke Blue Devils, their season, it started out with a loss to the Arizona Wildcats, and some people had questions how good this Duke Blue Devil team was, but they bounced back with a good win over Michigan State. But then they lost at Arkansas and at Georgia Tech. Neither team's that great this year, but then they were able to knock off Baylor. But then after that, they lost to Pittsburgh at home, losing to Jeff Capel, the former Duke assistant. But since then, Duke has posted 3 consecutive wins in a row, including a win at Virginia Tech, which is a tough place to play. So the Blue Devils are coming in hot into this rivalry game. Jon Scheyer squad has talent this season. Kyle Filipowski averaging 17 points and 8 boards. Jeremy Roach averaging 14 points per game this season. Mark Mitchell, 12 points per game. Jared McCain, 12 points per game. And Tyrese Proctor averaging 11 points per game. And that's very impressive for Duke to have 5 guys averaging double figures this season, because most teams usually only have around 3 or 4. The Blue Devils are a very balanced offensive attack, and it is very tough to slow them down from scoring the basketball at a high level because of the amount of weapons that they have that can get the ball in the hoop. And I think the other thing that makes Duke so dangerous as well is the mix of young talent and older talent. Kyle Filipowski, yes, he's only a sophomore, but he looks like a senior out there with the way he plays. Jeremy Roach has been at Duke for several years now. He spurned the NBA draft. He's playing some of his best basketball of his career. Mark Mitchell's a sophomore as well. And then you talk about a guy like Ryan Young that comes off the bench, the transfer from Northwestern. All of these guys help guys like Jared McCain and Caleb Foster, who are younger, who aren't as experienced, and that has made this Duke basketball team a lot better than some of the previous Duke teams that rely more on freshmen. Duke is a very good team, and that's why they're ranked in the top 10, and they are second in the ACC right now. But then when you look at North Carolina, the Tar Heels have had a bounce-back year. This is the best North Carolina team since the Roy Williams era. I know they went to the national championship game with Hubert Davis, but that was a tough season for North Carolina in the regular season, and they found a way in the tournament. But North Carolina has not been a top 5 team in college basketball since Roy Williams retired as head coach. They're having a fantastic year, and they're exceeding expectations. They lost to Villanova in the non-conference. That was a tough loss, but they were able to beat Arkansas and Tennessee in those Thanksgiving tournament games. So that was huge for the Tar Heels' confidence. Then they lost to UConn and Kentucky, but both teams are really good this year. Then they beat Oklahoma, but since then they've won all of their ACC games, and they had a 9-0 start in the ACC for the first time since the 2001 season. So that was even before Roy Williams became the head coach of North Carolina. And that's how impressive the Tar Heels have been posting that stat line. And then they slipped up at Georgia Tech. You knew it was coming. You didn't know when, but it was going to be very tough for North Carolina to go throughout ACC play undefeated. Duke's already slipped up like they did against Pittsburgh and Georgia Tech. It happens. And then North Carolina also falls to Georgia Tech like Duke did. And it was the game before the Duke Blue Devils, so you know they were looking ahead. Georgia Tech played very well to their credit, but I don't think this means North Carolina's fallen off a cliff and that they're no good now because they lost to Georgia Tech. I don't think that's true at all. North Carolina's number 9 in the net, and as you can see, their quad metrics are very good with only losses in quad 1 and quad 2. And Duke's number 17 in the net, and they have good metrics in the quad rankings as well. And then you look at the bracket matrix, North Carolina's still a 1 seed despite losing to Georgia Tech, and Duke is a 4 seed. So neither team is in bad shape at all whatsoever. Duke could use this win a little bit more, but North Carolina, even with that loss to Georgia Tech, well deserving of a 1 seed right now, and a win over Duke would continue to solidify that. And the reason why North Carolina is playing so well is because of RJ Davis. Ever since Caleb Love decided to transfer out of the program, RJ Davis's stats have gone through the roof. He's averaging a career-high 22 points per game, 4 boards, 3 assists. He is the reason that North Carolina is playing as well as they are. But then you take into account Armando Bacot, who's taken a bit of a back seat this season, only averaging 13 points per game, which is fewer than he did last season, and 10 rebounds, but he's still playing well, contributing at a high level. Harrison Ingram's averaging 12 points per game and 9 rebounds. The Stanford transfer has been exactly what the doctor ordered for North Carolina to help complement RJ Davis and Armando Bacot on the squad. And Cormac Ryan's averaging 11 points per game. I think something that's kind of crazy that no one really would have expected is that Harrison Ingram is shooting the 3 ball better than Cormac Ryan. Harrison Ingram's shooting 40% from 3, and Cormac Ryan's only shooting 30% from 3. I would have never guessed that in the preseason. I would have thought Cormac Ryan would have shot better, but still Cormac Ryan is contributing very well for the Tar Heels. But Harrison Ingram, he's underratedly playing some great basketball this season, and I believe if he was a freshman right now doing this, he would be getting a lot more attention. But he's a 3-year player now in college basketball, but still what he is doing is not going unnoticed. He's playing very well. And then you got Elliot Cadeau, the freshman, who's averaging 7 points per game. Yes, he's struggling from the 3-point line, but his assist numbers are very solid. He is actually averaging more assists than RJ Davis right now. Then you got Seth Trimble, Jalen Washington, and Jalen Withers, the Louisville transfer. They all chip in a few points per game to round out that bench rotation that is improved for North Carolina and is helping out Hubert Davis a lot more than North Carolina last year when they weren't getting a lot of bench production. But who do I think is going to win this rivalry game on Saturday in college basketball? Yes, the Tennessee-Kentucky game and the Houston-Kansas game that are also a part of the triple header are massive matchups as well that people are looking forward to. But this is the game that everybody's going to have their eyes on, and for good reason. It always delivers, again, as Dick Vitale always says, and with these two teams now being ranked in the top 10, there is no reason to miss this game, because whether you're a Carolina or Duke fan or not, this game is always great for college basketball, and it is going to be a hotly contested game. I think it's going to go down to the wire either way, because when you look at Duke, this team is very good, despite having a couple games this season where they haven't played well, but no team is perfect. Look at their three-point shooting percentage. They're shooting 38.7% from the three-point line as a team, 73% from the free throw line, and 48% from the field. Those are insane stats for a ball club. All of those stats are great, and they're only averaging 9 turnovers per game. And then if you look at the blocks and the steals, Duke's averaging almost 7 steals per game and 4 blocks. And plus, when you take into account that normally North Carolina has the experience advantage, they still do. North Carolina has more experience than the Duke Blue Devils, but Duke still has more experience than they usually do, and I think that is dramatically going to help their chances to win. But when you look at North Carolina, though, the fact that they also have good shooting stats, 35% from 3, not as good as Duke's 38%, but still solid. 75% at the line is actually better than the Duke Blue Devils, so that's going to help North Carolina down the stretch if this is a close game and it comes down to free throws. The fact they shoot that well from the free throw line, 45% from the field is fairly solid. 10 turnovers per game, so they are a little bit more turnover prone, and they average 6 steals and 4 blocks, so they're about the same as the Duke Blue Devils. When you look at the defenses for both these teams, they have their moments where they play very well, but they've also had their moments where they've given up a lot of points. Like Duke gave up 80 points to the Pittsburgh Panthers, and then you look at North Carolina, they gave up 74 points to Georgia Tech. So both teams aren't perfect on defense, but they are capable capable of playing defense. But you got to remember, this game is at the North Carolina Tar Heels. It is in the Dean Dome, and that's going to be very tough for Duke. I haven't even mentioned that outside of saying where this game was going to be played at the beginning. It's going to be very tough for Duke to play at Carolina. We know they can do it. We know that they have knocked off the North Carolina Tar Heels in the Dean Dome tons of times in this rivalry, but North Carolina is a better team than they were the last couple of years. The fact that Duke swept North Carolina last year, I think that's going to play a role in the motivation for North Carolina, and the fact that they just came off a tough loss at Georgia Tech where they were looking ahead. Duke's kind of riding high with a 3-game win streak. I believe that the North Carolina Tar Heels will knock off the Duke Blue Devils 79-75 for North Carolina to get revenge for being swept last season, and for the Tar Heels to solidify themselves as the favorite to win the ACC this season, being 10-1 in the conference if they can get this win over Duke. I think North Carolina's chances of winning the ACC go through the roof exponentially if they can win, but if Duke wins, they'll only be a game back at 8-2 in the conference. North Carolina will be 9-2, and Duke would kind of have an advantage because they'll be playing North Carolina at their own place next time, and if they can get that win, then they could pass North Carolina in the standings if they keep winning. But this should be another fantastic addition in this rivalry on Tobacco Road, the greatest rivalry in college basketball, and I think it will deliver us another fantastic matchup in this game. I just think that North Carolina is going to be a little bit better than Duke this season. They have the experience, they have the talent. RJ Davis, I believe, is going to have a big day, and while Duke will do their best to slow him down, Filipowski will have a big day. I think Armando Bacot will slow him down just enough, and North Carolina, they're going to be able to squeak out a 79-75 win over the Duke Blue Devils. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below, and whether you believe that the Duke Blue Devils can beat North Carolina for the third straight time in a row, and that they can win in the Dean Dome, and Duke can get within a game of the North Carolina Tar Heels in the ACC standings, or whether you believe that North Carolina will be able to knock off the Duke Blue Devils in this top 10 showdown in the greatest rivalry in college basketball, and Hubert Davis' squad can solidify themselves at the top of the ACC standings with a great chance to win the conference this season if they can keep winning and get revenge on their arch rivals in the Duke Blue Devils in the process. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Like this video down below. Follow me on Twitter as well. Link is in the description, and I will see you next time.